Whether you're buying your very first home, upgrading to fit a growing family, or searching for a perfect Colorado mountain retreat, you've come to the right place. This guide is packed with essential steps, tips, tools, and insider advice that you will need to make a transition to a new home. We acquire clients in a number of different ways, but some of the main ways are Google, sign calls off of our current listings, and social media. We typically get calls that go like this: "Hey, do you want to help me find this type of property?" It doesn't work out to just have our relationship based off that 2-minute conversation. So we actually go through a lengthy process to decide to work together. That very first step of the process is if you're pre-approved or not. And we'll ask that right off the bat. If you are seriously looking, we'll need to know a price range to search in, and pre-approval helps us figure that out. It helps us know the stage of the game that you're in and how big or small you need to go. Maybe you're someone that's reached out to us and you're just not sure at all that you're ready to buy something. You don't even know when you're going to be ready to buy something. You're just kind of curious and you want to know more about the market. That's okay too. We call those C leads. And no, it's not like a downgrade, like an A, a B, and you get a C. It's more like we're just not going to bother you as much. We'll kind of let you do your own thing. We'll provide you with information, get back to you quickly whenever we can, but we just won't harass you as much because we know that you're taking your time and thinking about things. You're going to receive the same level of service and help that any other lead would receive. So we'll kind of leave it up to you when you want to reach out to us to see properties and ask questions. Then you can figure out what you like, and it will be a good way for you to get to know the area and get educated about properties if you take your time viewing them online and asking questions. What you may want to do is subscribe to our newsletter with real estate tips and information and local insights. I'll probably call you still every few months or email or text you and check in just to make sure that the searches that we do have set up for you are working and that the parameters are correct. But I really am going to let you take the lead for most part. And if I get the sense that you're not quite ready, we'll just wait in the wings until you are. And then we'll employ all of our regular steps and strategies, including searching actively for off-market listings that fit the bill for you. I'll scour the MLS, which is the multiple listing service. And when the time comes, we'll get you into just the right place. If you're not pre-approved yet, we do have a great list of preferred lending partners that we can refer you to, and we will make those introductions so that you guys can connect. You can interview them and see who you'll work best with to do all of the financial stuff that's precursor to buying a house. We'll talk through certain services that they provide. They provide different types of loans that work for different properties and what their costs will be and how they'll communicate with you. All of these things are really important when choosing a lender. But if the lender is on our list, you can trust that we've worked with them before. They've done a great job with other clients, and they'll do a great job for you too. Different lenders provide different types of loan products. And so you'll want to talk to several of them to make sure that the type of property you want to buy fits with the type of loan products they provide, that they can supply exactly what you need for your specific circumstances. If you're currently watching this on YouTube and looking for a buyer's agent right now, I think it's important for you to know that you can reach out to us. Here on YouTube, you can comment, you can go to our website, put in your information, you can text, call, or email us. All of that information is in the graphic at the top of our YouTube channel. You can put a comment here on this video that says, "Hey, I want to know more," and we'll of course get in touch with you and find a way to help you do what you need to do at any step of the buying process. So once we have an idea of your price point via a pre-approval letter or a notice, like a letter from the bank that shows funds available, we move on to the next step, and that is a buyer consultation. These two steps can sometimes kind of be scrunched together. If you're working on the pre-approval process and you don't quite have that solidified yet, we still can have a meeting and go over other important things like what locations are you searching in, what are your have-to-haves, and what are your want-to-haves, and what's your timing like, so that we will be clear and on the same page as far as all of those details go. This appointment is called a buyer's consultation so that we can do that, consult with you, the buyer, and know exactly what you need. We can do it in person. I can come to your home. We can meet at a location like my office. We can also do it through Google Meet, which is the platform we generally use to schedule it and to have it. So at that buyer consult, we'll get to know each other and talk about ways that you like to have communication. We will talk through a questionnaire that you can fill out prior to that appointment or during the appointment. It's a form that's a Google Sheet, and we ask you to complete that because it helps us set up the search parameters for the property, but it also gives us more detailed information than that to find the perfect property for you. It really helps us imagine and gets ingrained in our brain exactly what you need and want. And that way, when we're out looking at any properties, either for you or even with other people, we'll stay on the hunt for just the right place. Buyer consult really is a key step for knowing your needs for the property that you want to buy. The other important part of the buyer consult is because recently there were legal changes in the real estate business, and we need a buyer agency agreement signed before we ever go look at a property together physically, like on site. So on this form, we'll have a typical percentage that we usually request for compensation, and it could work out a lot of different ways. That percentage will be on the buyer agency agreement, but you may or may not end up paying that percentage. It might be that the property that you're wanting to purchase eventually will have the sellers offering a percentage to me, your buyer's agent, or they might be offering the whole thing, and it's entirely negotiable, but it does need to be lined out in your initial buyer's agreement because we just don't know what we're going to encounter on properties, and we want to be on the same page before we look at property together as to how I'm going to get paid for my services. If you have questions about that or the laws currently surrounding that, please feel free to put a comment below and I will answer them. You can also reach out with a text, a phone call, or an email to answer any other questions about that. We do have some other videos on this page that cover information regarding that. The buyer consult form is great because it asks things that you might not think to tell me out loud, and I might forget to even ask. The buyer consult form is great because it asks things that you might not think to tell me, and I might forget to ask. The basics are easy, right? How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, minimum square footage, locations that you like. But one thing people always mention is if they need a fenced yard or not for a pet, or sometimes they might like a certain amount of land. Those are all basics and easy to fill out in a search parameter on the MLS. But this buyer consult form goes into even more detail and helps us know things like, are you willing to fix up a property? Do you want it to be move-in ready? Are you hopeful to move in the next 3 months? Or is an indefinite amount of time okay to look for just the right thing? This all helps us get a really clear picture of what you need, and then that way we can help more efficiently because we will have the clear picture in our head as we're searching with you and as we're out and about looking at other properties. Aside from the buyer's consult, going to look at properties together is really the best way for us to be on the same page. It's a lot like dating, I always say. It's like you can't really know what the right thing is until you see a lot of the wrong thing. So you'll spend time looking at properties you don't like. And when you go to look in person, it's so different from looking at pictures online. And when we do that together, I always get a great sense of like, hey, really, they like this and this and this, but they hated this. And it's surprising sometimes the things that come out when we look together in person. And I'll know those things for future showings too. So another thing to know is that I don't mind looking at a lot of properties. It won't be like looking at 5 and then I tell you, hey, you have to pick one, like decide right now. That's just not how it works. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes 2. I've had clients that have looked for over 2 years before they did finally purchase a property. And it was all worth it in the end because then they found exactly what was right for them. And actually, I found what was right for them off market and said, hey, I think I finally found your property. So there's no set number of time. And then I have other clients that, they find it the first day. They've been looking at it online. They already know they're going to love it. And the going in person just confirms that that's the right place for them. So for every buyer that reaches out, we set up a property search, and depending on the area in which you're searching, it will be in a different MLS. So you could get several different emails depending on your geographic location of your search. We belong to 4 MLSs and we cover a majority of South Central Colorado, 4 counties, but specifically the Highway 50 corridor is our specialty. So anywhere along Highway 50, we can help you find just the right thing. When we set that search up, you're going to get an email that's usually daily. That's what I recommend, but we can make it only weekly or bi-weekly if that's when you have time to look at it. So within those emails, you'll get to have the properties that fit your search parameters and that we discussed in the buyer's consultation. When you get that email, message me and let me know if there's something that, hey, we got to go see. There's also ways to like the properties in the search portal. If you're not local or it's tricky to get here, I can always go and preview a property. I film it and check it out prior to you coming in person. And if it's a longer distance to travel, we can try to set up a whole bunch of properties for the same time and day so that you can make one trip to see everything. So if you're local, that gives us the perfect opportunity to go often. We can go on a lunch break or after work. We want to work with your schedule and give you the opportunity to see what you need to see to make the decisions that you need to make. The other thing to know is that I need to set up the showings when you request them. So sometimes that will take a minute to hear back from the sellers and get approval for us to be on their property. Sometimes if they have tenants, we have to give 24-hour notice, and I'll do my best to make it happen if we don't quite have that much time. But once it's all approved, I'll send a schedule to you, usually with a Google link that maps everything out. Seeing multiple properties at a time, it's nice to map it out so that we're efficient in our time going from place to place. And then we'll have the order of how we go see them lined out, and I'll ask you to rate the properties on a scale from 1 to 10, or sometimes 1 to 5 if we're only seeing a few. And I like to do that because it helps summarize in our minds what we've seen and solidify your choices so that I'm collecting thoughts from you on what you love and you don't love about different properties. So after touring homes together, going over all of your preferred parameters, we've finally found the right property. Yay! We're going to write an offer, and I'll need a few things from you. One is your full legal name as it appears on a government-issued ID, which we will use at closing. And I'll need to know how you want to take title. Like if you're going to do it as a married couple, which is jointly, or with somebody else, you can also do it jointly. You can also do it separately with more than one party where you have different kinds of ownership. We can explain all that. And then this title ownership actually indicates how the property will pass on to people after you're not in the picture anymore. So it's really important that we get all that straight. It can be changed later, but it's nice to have it sorted out right off the bat. We'll get an email address from you. All of our documents are usually signed electronically. And if this is a problem for you to e-sign, we can always bring paper copies or bring a computer to you to help you sign something online. And last of all, hopefully we will have a closing date. All of the dates and deadlines on the contract are going to be based off of a closing date. We reverse engineer the process, so the dates and deadlines that we need to get through the transaction by the closing date. Say if we want to close on the 30th of a month, here's everything that needs to happen by that date. So we meet all of these deadlines before the closing date. So that's all I need to start actually writing and working on the offer for you. And last of all, hopefully we have a closing date. All of the dates and deadlines on the contract are going to be based off of the closing date. So we reverse engineer the process to say if we want to close by the 30th of the month, appraisal, inspection, all of our due diligence, loan termination deadlines need to happen before that date. So that's all I need to start working on the offer is how you're going to take title, email addresses, legal names, closing date, and then we'll get that going. Once I have the paperwork ready, there's a few other documents that I'll send you to. So we'll set an appointment if you need to, or we can just email back and forth with questions. We can also do a Google Meet so we can look at the contract together live. And we make sure that you have a clear understanding of everything that's in the contract before we submit the offer to the seller. Once it's submitted, we have to wait. You usually won't hear from me unless I've heard something from the seller. So the minute I've heard something, whether it is a yes or a no, I'll let you know. In any instance, if they're sending a counter offer, and if we haven't heard back in a while and it's getting closer to the deadline, you'll hear from me to keep you updated. We'll just kind of be waiting together. I want to see you succeed and get the property that you want, and I will be there every step of the way. So if we don't go under contract, and that can happen sometimes, then we go back on property search and start looking over again. If it's an absolute no and we decide that we can't come to terms with a seller that we've offered towards and we can't come to an agreement, we'll just keep looking for the right thing. Now, If your contract is accepted, congratulations. We'll then proceed to the next step, which is an email that has an under contract timeline filled with all of the details that you need to know about, such as next steps for inspection, setting in earnest money, when the appraisal will happen. And this will take you all the way through till closing. We'll update you along the way and inform you on everything. The first thing to tackle once we go under contract is the earnest money, because the contract tells us how much earnest money is due and where it needs to be delivered and when. So all of that will be in your letter. And then there will be a date that the inspection needs to be completed by, as well as options for different inspectors that you could use. And of course, the contract will have the appraisal date and the closing date. That kind of outlines the major points that you need to do things about for the process of buying. And I'll keep you updated on everything else as we're moving forward. And we will be in touch to ensure that every single date and deadline is met. I hope you will review the contract on your own too and ask questions. I like questions. But having the email with the succinct dates and deadlines outlined is just a good, easy way to put it on your calendar and refer back to when you need to. Things like the earnest money and getting it into the title company, we can talk about that initially, but it's also nice to have it in writing in that email in front of you. So once the inspection is scheduled, I'll coordinate to be there with you to view the inspection results. We'll basically be on property again. You can take measurements, you can look at paint colors, whatever you need to do. But the most important thing is going through the inspection with the inspector. And then after that, we don't really have to be at the property again until right before closing. So if there is things you want to do to look at the property, we'll just set up those appointments and get in again to be there and appreciate what you're going to be moving into. So it's really important that you're not only in communication with me, but also your lender. And the lender will do things like help you set up property insurance, because that goes with your loan. You'll need to get them information that they are required to have as quickly as possible so that we can move through the lending process and have that all set up for you in time to close on time. The biggest question I get all of the time is, do I get my earnest money back if something falls through in the process? Honestly, most people that I'm trying to help will want to know this, and of course they do. It's a huge chunk of money. And yes, you do get your earnest money back as long as we follow the contract, including staying within the dates and deadlines that have been outlined and meeting all of our due diligence. So if, for example, we go to the inspection, there's something that you just can't handle or don't want to fix, then we discuss that with the seller. And if they're not going to agree to do anything, you can get your earnest money back. Also, if it doesn't appraise, if the price on the property is different from what we are under contract on and the appraisal comes back with less than that value, we can back out. And then with the loan, as long as it's not your fault, and I have to say this because there's a whole other realm of circumstances where, let's say you decide to go buy a car a week before you buy a house, or you buy a bunch of new furniture to go in the house, and then your credit changes and it causes the loan to terminate. That would be a problem. And if it's done after the loan termination deadline, we won't be able to get your earnest money back. So you need to be really careful and ask about any money decisions that you're making with your lender. And you can ask me too, but the lender's the boss on this case. So all of those things will affect what the lender's already pre-approved you for, and we don't want to mess that up. For the buying process, we just want things to stay level and baseline until you're in the property. Don't switch jobs. Don't cut back on your hours. All those things are really, really important while you're in the buying process. But yes, generally, I will make sure you get your earnest money back if you need to, because that's my job to protect it. The dates and deadlines in the contract are there to protect you and to make sure that we do go through all of the due diligence. And if something isn't done the way that it needs to be for you to buy the property, that you have a chance to move on to another property and get that money to move it to another contract. So after we've gone through all of those initial steps, and it's a lot, I know, then we have checked off all the dates and deadlines, and we're maybe just waiting for the appraisal to come back through at value or even above value. It's always nice when there's equity to get it in there and know that your property is worth more than you paid for. Heaven forbid it comes back below value, because then we go through a whole another set of negotiations to decide what to do. Sometimes the seller will come down to the appraisal price. Sometimes the buyer has to come up with the difference. That's especially if the seller has like a backup offer. And sometimes they'll meet in the middle. But usually there's a way to work through that process too and still get the property. Then we also have things like selecting property insurance with the lender. They certify that and make sure that it works with your loan. And especially if you're buying a mountain property, insurance can take a little while to figure out because of wildfire, and we even have flooding areas here. There's things that you need to be aware of that a local insurance provider can really help you with, and I can connect you with those people. The last few days or even week, we really just are sitting back and waiting for closing, and we're waiting to get the clear to close from the lender's underwriter. And that is especially when it's important if they ask for extra little documents or items that you get them those right away. Because one of these days, when you're getting all those little documents in, the lender will finally say, "You're clear to close." And that's what we've been waiting for. It's everyone's 3 favorite words in a real estate transaction. We know that we're in the real home stretch, and all we really need to do at that point is do a walkthrough, make sure the property is in the condition that we planned on it being in for closing, and sign the documents. If you can't be in person for closing, then we will record and photograph everything and have you certify that you agree with the condition that the property's in before you sign documents. So wherever you're signing documents, you will need to sign with a notary, and you'll be able to have that worked out for you. But sometimes we can even sign at the property that you're buying, and that's really fun. And I like to be with you because sometimes there's questions. So there's a closer employed by the title company, and you can ask them those questions. They know all of the paperwork really, really well. And then I recommend you bring the funds in a cashier's check, or you have them wired to the title company prior to signing, because sometimes there are delays, and it's nice to have the money sitting there so that we know there's nothing that's going to keep us from getting the keys. Because if the money is not there, technically it's not actually closed. So it's good to have it there, sometimes even the day before. And if you can't be in person before closing, then we will video tour, as I said, the property and make sure everything is good and that it's as you want it. Once you confirm that, then we are set to go sign. I really like you to be there in person so we can do that walkthrough together. And there's some silly things that I like to do, like run all the faucets, check under the sinks for leaks, flush all the toilets, make sure windows open and shut that are supposed to. I mean, one time I had a dishwasher that had leaked all over the kitchen floor, and it was 2 hours before we were supposed to go to close. And I had to call the other realtor and say, "Hey, we can't close until the kitchen is cleaned up. There's, for sure no water damage, and whatever is wrong with this funky dishwasher is fixed." So they did take care of all of that, and then we still signed later on in that day. So just all of that to say, it becomes your problem once you sign the papers, and the seller has no obligation to do anything about anything after you've taken ownership of the property. So you want to make sure it is what you are expecting when you close and go sign. I like to be really thorough about that. Anyways, that's about it. I think whenever you do sign, if you're mailing documents and not in person, you do have to wait a few days for it to come back to the title company. And that can take a little bit of time. Oh, if you're buying land, we'll just need to drive by and make sure there's nothing crazy happening on the land, like someone else building a house there or a homeless camp occupying it. That's unlikely to happen, but you just want to make sure. Just know that after all of this is over and you signed and things are done, we will keep checking in with you even after you close, all through the moving process even. And we may even ask you to leave us a review if you've appreciated our services and it's gone well for you and you think that someone else might benefit from the type of service we provide. We would love for you to leave us a Google review. That's how people find us to work with us. We'll send you a link in an email, and we even have a template that's pretty easy to fill in the blanks for, and that will allow you to take less than 5 minutes and give us a rating on how you think we did. It helps us attract the right kinds of buyers like you. that we love working with, and we hope that we can help them too. So thanks for watching. If you have found this helpful or you like this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment on any of our other videos. We have some great information on here, property tours. We are always here to help. Thanks.